Associating partners with Allah. This represents the most profound and severe transgression in the Islamic faith, known conceptually as shirk, and it stands as the absolute antithesis to the core message of Islam. The entire foundation of the religion rests upon Tawheed, which is the unshakable belief in the absolute oneness, uniqueness, and exclusive sovereignty of the Creator. To associate partners with Him is to attribute divine qualities, rights of worship, or ultimate authority to anything or anyone within His creation. This can manifest in physical forms, such as bowing to statues, idols, or celestial bodies. But it also takes insidious spiritual forms, such as directing prayers, supplications, or ultimate reliance toward deceased saints, prophets, angels, or even powerful human figures. The severity of this sin lies in its fundamental injustice. It redirects the gratitude, awe, and submission owed exclusively to the sustainer of the universe toward beings or entities that are themselves dependent, created, and entirely powerless. Islamic theology teaches that the Creator provided humanity with life, intellect, sustenance, and guidance, and therefore, directing the highest form of devotion to anything else is a profound betrayal of the covenant between the human soul and its Maker. It is the only sin that the divine texts explicitly state will never be forgiven if a person dies upon it without having sincerely repented. However, it is crucial to understand that during a person's lifetime, the door to repentance remains wide open, and returning to pure monotheism completely wipes away the previous history of this transgression. The spiritual consequence of this act is a complete severance from divine grace, leading the soul into a state of deep confusion and vulnerability, as it desperately clings to elements of the material world that can neither harm nor benefit it in reality. By elevating creation to the status of the Creator, a human being degrades their own intellect and spiritual dignity, enslaving themselves to the very universe they were meant to navigate as honored stewards. The preservation of pure monotheism is therefore not merely a theological technicality, but the essential framework for human liberation, ensuring that a person bows only to the source of all existence, thereby freeing themselves from the tyranny of superstitious fear, societal subjugation, and the worship of their own desires. Practicing magic. This encompasses the pursuit, application, and engagement with sorcery, witchcraft, and the unseen dark arts, known in the Islamic tradition as Sihr. This practice is categorized among the most destructive sins because its very foundation requires a deliberate rebellion against divine authority and the desecration of faith. In Islamic theology, genuine magic is not viewed merely as sleight of hand or harmless illusion, but as a dangerous reality that involves cooperating with malevolent, unseen entities such as the shayateen or devils. To gain access to this hidden knowledge and manipulative power, a practitioner must typically commit acts of blatant disbelief, degrade sacred texts, or offer devotion to these dark entities, completely nullifying their covenant with the Creator. The worldly allure of magic lies in the false promise of supernatural control over others. The ability to inflict harm, manipulate emotions, or alter the natural course of events to fulfill petty jealousies or vengeful desires. However, this pursuit inflicts catastrophic damage upon the fabric of society. It breeds deep paranoia, shatters trusting relationships, inexplicably destroys marriages through planted animosity, and causes severe psychological and physical distress to innocent victims. The person who engages in this practice, whether by casting the spells themselves or by paying a sorcerer to do so on their behalf, effectively trades their eternal soul for temporary, illusionary gains in the material world. Furthermore, the supposed power of the magician is entirely deceptive, as Islamic teachings emphatically assert that no harm or benefit can ever occur except by the ultimate permission of God. The magician remains entirely subservient to divine decree, possessing no independent sovereignty over creation. Engaging with fortune-tellers, diviners, or individuals claiming to possess hidden knowledge of the unseen also falls under this severe prohibition, as the unseen belongs exclusively to the Creator. The spiritual remedy and protection against such malice are deeply embedded in the daily life of a Muslim, relying upon specific verses of the Quran, authentic supplications, and maintaining a state of ritual purity and unwavering trust in divine protection. Ultimately, the path of magic is one of immense spiritual delusion, leading the practitioner into an abyss of darkness, isolation, and spiritual ruin as they actively wage war against the natural order and the protective boundaries established by divine mercy. The sanctity of human life is one of the most rigorously protected principles in Islamic jurisprudence and theology, making the unjust taking of a life an atrocity of unimaginable proportions. The breath of life is a sacred divine trust bestowed by the Creator, and no individual possesses the moral or spiritual authority to extinguish it out of anger, vengeance, racial prejudice, or personal malice. The profound gravity of this act is vividly illustrated in the Quranic declaration that whoever takes a single innocent life, it is as if they have killed all of humanity. And whoever saves a single life, it is as if they have saved all of humanity. This powerful analogy underscores the interconnectedness of the human family and demonstrates that the violation of one person's right to exist is an assault on the very concept of human sanctity. The destruction caused by murder extends far beyond the immediate victim. It traumatizes entire communities, leaves behind grieving widows and vulnerable orphans, and tears apart the delicate social fabric of security and mutual trust. Islam strictly reserves the right to administer lethal justice exclusively to established legal systems and legitimate state authorities under meticulously defined circumstances, completely condemning and outlawing any form of vigilante justice, mob violence, or personal retribution. The spiritual weight of this sin is terrifying, as the texts describe the Day of Judgment as a time when the victim will physically hold on to their killer, presenting them before the absolute justice of the divine, demanding retribution for the life that was violently stolen from them. This sin demonstrates a supreme arrogance, as the murderer assumes a power over life and death that belongs solely to God. While accidental deaths carry their own sets of legal and financial responsibilities, such as blood money and expiation to seek forgiveness and compensate the grieving family, the intentional, premeditated taking of an innocent life carries the threat of eternal wrath. The strict prohibition serves as a definitive deterrent, meant to cultivate a society where every individual, regardless of their social standing, faith, or background, feels entirely secure in their physical existence, knowing that their life is shielded by the heaviest of divine decrees. Consuming usury. The engagement in exploitative financial practices, universally understood in Islamic law as riba, represents a severe spiritual and economic transgression that fundamentally corrupts the distribution of wealth within society. Usury is defined as any guaranteed, unearned increase demanded on a loan, where the lender profits solely from the passage of time, without assuming any risk or contributing any productive effort to the economic endeavor. This practice is entirely antithetical to the Islamic economic philosophy, which is built upon the principles of fairness, mutual risk-sharing, and active, honest commerce. By legally permitting the wealthy to hoard capital and extract guaranteed returns from those who are in desperate need of financial assistance, usury creates a vicious, inescapable cycle of debt that structurally oppresses the vulnerable. It strips individuals of their dignity, seizes their hard-earned resources, and enriches a privileged few without the creation of any real goods or societal benefits. The divine condemnation of this practice is remarkably severe, uniquely described in the sacred texts as an open declaration of war from the Creator and His Messenger. This unparalleled terminology highlights the catastrophic societal damage caused by interest-based economies, which historically and modernly lead to immense wealth inequality, the destruction of communal bonds, and widespread financial slavery. When money becomes an end in itself, rather than a medium of exchange, the natural human inclination toward empathy, charity, and mutual support is replaced by greed and exploitation. The consumption of such illicit wealth spiritually deadens the heart, rendering a person's prayers unanswered and stripping away the divine blessings, or barakah, from their life and provisions. Islam vigorously promotes trade, investment, and charitable lending where no extra return is demanded, encouraging a dynamic economy where wealth circulates freely and benefits all strata of society. By categorically prohibiting usury, the ethical framework of Islam seeks to protect the desperate from predatory practices, ensuring that financial relationships are governed by compassion, equitable risk, and genuine productivity, rather than the cold, calculative extraction of wealth from the weakest members of the community. Consuming an orphan's wealth. The protection of the most vulnerable members of society is a foundational pillar of Islamic ethics, and the child who has lost their father before reaching the age of maturity, known as a yatim, occupies a position of unique sanctity. When a guardian is entrusted with the care of an orphan and their inherited wealth, they are taking on a monumental, sacred responsibility that is closely monitored by the Creator. To abuse this trust by unjustly consuming, squandering, or misappropriating the orphan's property is to commit an act of profound cowardice and moral bankruptcy. The guardian may face temptations to quietly mix the orphan's inheritance with their own assets to disguise theft, to charge exorbitant fees for their guardianship, or to hastily spend the wealth before the child comes of age and can demand their rightful property. The divine warnings against such betrayals are chillingly explicit, describing those who swallow the wealth of orphans unjustly as literally consuming raging fire into their bellies, a vivid metaphor for the agonizing spiritual consequences awaiting them. This severe prohibition is designed to counter the historical and natural human tendency of the strong to prey upon the weak, establishing an uncompromising legal and moral shield around the child who has no one else to defend their rights. The psychological trauma inflicted upon an orphan who realizes that the very person tasked with their protection has robbed them is devastating, leading to a profound loss of faith in humanity and deep societal alienation. Conversely, Islam elevates the honest and compassionate care of an orphan to the highest spiritual ranks, with the Prophet illustrating that the one who sponsors and protects an orphan will be as close to him in the hereafter as two fingers are to each other. A righteous guardian is required to manage the wealth meticulously, to invest it safely so that it is not consumed by mandatory charity over time, and to maintain perfectly transparent accounting. When the orphan reaches physical maturity and demonstrates sound financial judgment, the guardian is commanded to hand over the wealth completely and honorably, fulfilling their sacred duty and proving their integrity before God and society. This highly specific transgression occurs when a believer turns their back and deserts their comrades during a defensively sanctioned, legitimate military engagement where the survival of the community is actively at stake. In the historical and conceptual context of Islamic ethics, military action is strictly regulated, fought to dismantle severe oppression, protect the innocent, and secure the fundamental right to exist and practice faith freely. When an army is formed under legitimate leadership to face an existential threat, every individual soldier forms a critical link in the defensive shield of the entire nation. To flee in the face of the enemy out of sheer cowardice is to completely break this sacred covenant of collective security. This act of desertion is immensely destructive because it instantly shatters the morale of the remaining forces, creates deadly vulnerabilities in the defensive lines, and essentially hands victory to the oppressors, thereby abandoning the civilian population, including women, children, and the elderly, to slaughter and subjugation. It is essential to distinguish this grave sin from permissible military tactics. A strategic withdrawal ordered by a commander to regroup, secure a better vantage point, or merge with another unit is not considered fleeing, but rather a necessary component of warfare, The sin specifically addresses the selfish, fearful abandonment of duty when standing firm is critically required. This prohibition fundamentally trains the human soul in the virtues of immense courage, self-sacrifice, and ultimate reliance upon the Creator in the face of terrifying adversity. It demands that a person values the collective survival of the community and the preservation of truth above their own temporary physical safety. The cowardice inherent in fleeing demonstrates a catastrophic failure of faith, revealing that the fear of the enemy has overpowered the trust in divine promise and the commitment to a just cause. By classifying this desertion among the most destructive sins, the ethical framework ensures that those who stand to protect the vulnerable do so with absolute resolve, knowing that holding the line against tyranny is an act of the highest spiritual devotion, and abandoning it is a profound betrayal of both humanity and the divine. Slandering chaste women. The preservation of honor, reputation, and familial integrity is heavily safeguarded within the Islamic social order, making the false accusation of illegal sexual misconduct, known as qadhf, a devastating crime. This sin occurs when a person casually or maliciously accuses an innocent, pure, and believing woman of adultery or fornication without providing the strictly mandated legal evidence. The destructive power of a false rumor is immense. It can permanently obliterate a person's dignity, destroy marriages, fracture entire families, and cause unimaginable psychological trauma and public humiliation to the victim. To prevent the careless destruction of lives through gossip and hearsay, Islamic law places a deliberately insurmountable evidentiary burden upon the accuser. Anyone making such a severe claim must produce exactly 4 reliable, independent eyewitnesses who saw the explicit physical act occur at the exact same time. This incredibly strict requirement effectively means that unless the act was committed in blatant, public defiance of all societal decency, it is legally impossible to prove, thereby completely shutting the door on rumors, suspicions, and circumstantial accusations. If an accuser fails to produce these 4 witnesses, they themselves are subjected to severe corporal punishment. Their testimony is permanently rejected in all future legal matters, and they are branded with a status of grave disobedience. While the texts specifically highlight the slander of chaste women due to the historical and societal vulnerability of their reputations, the profound ethical prohibition extends equally to slandering innocent men. This stern deterrent addresses the darker inclinations of human nature, where people often find entertainment in the downfall of others, carelessly repeating sensational stories without verifying the truth. By categorizing this slander as one of the major destructive sins, the religion mandates a culture of immense discretion, commanding believers to assume the absolute best of one another, to conceal the private faults of their peers, and to violently guard their tongues. It reinforces the principle that a person's honor is as sacred as their physical blood and wealth, and that destroying someone's character through fabricated or unproven accusations is a profound injustice that will be severely reckoned with by the ultimate judge.